some of the ways of choosing different types of activities in the class. And that's also related to what we talked about with the classroom. This first page helps you think about low versus high investment on the part of the learner. This top page, which I think is very helpful to think about. One-way, two-way, self-managed, managed by the instructor. The second one helps you think through learning styles of your students and whether you have made some provision for students with all different kinds of learning styles in your unit. I think that's important to cross-check. We all tend to work towards our own learning styles and sometimes overlook students who are very different from us. I do. I know that that's true. Also, the next sheet, Teaching and Learning Strategies Mix, gives you some alternatives, like alternatives to discussion or alternatives to lecture or alternatives to ways to give feedback on assignments. The next sheet that's landscape gives you examples of different kinds of technology for presenting and organizing, for searching, for communicating. These are all kind of different ways to slice up thinking through what you want to use. And then advantages for the learner in this last handout of different kinds of learning activities. So these are things that I found handy to think about. And then lastly, there's this little section from the chapter on when it's advantageous to use multimedia and some cautions for using multimedia. And some of those are really practical, like can your students download something as big?
Large files.
Right. Or do your students have access to the internet to play, a video that you need them to look at the night before class? Or if, obviously they can come to campus and do that, but they need to plan ahead. So just thinking of the mechanics of how students will be able to do something. So just stick these in the back of your notebook, and as you're working on your unit, I think it might be helpful to run through them and cross-check what you're doing in your unit with the
suggestions. Okay. I just thought for my last part this evening, I was tying into the using video effectively, since you all found a video and evaluated a video. This is one of my favorite areas to talk about because this is what I spend a lot of time in my master's program. My master's is in instructional technology. I have a master's in education, and so creating videos and all that kind of thing has really been something that I've been interested in. And I did my dissertation research on using video feedback in the classroom. So it's like, okay, what are some of my sort of best tips for you in using instructional videos? So we have the PowerPoint pulled up there, and it'll be the second slide.
Okay.
And the first tip is to preview the video before you use it. Now that sounds really, really basic, but I was telling Charlotte yesterday, one of my pet peeves is an instructor who doesn't have time to plan or something and just pulls a video off the shelf and shows it to the class. And I mean, that's just not, and we're all
that's
going,
dangerous.
Who would, exactly, and so, so preview the video before you show it, and that allows you the opportunity to screen content for one thing. For example, I have one really good video on how to prepare a speech, but it uses a manuscript approach. Well, I don't want my students writing a manuscript for their speeches. I want them to use outlines, so it's much more extemporaneous and conversational. So having watched that, I sometimes use that video, but I always qualify it and say, this is manuscript approach. This is not what I'm recommending for this class. But again, that's something that I needed to be aware of. Sometimes the vocabulary will be different. Like tonight I wrote outcomes instead of objectives. In one of my conflict management videos, sometimes one of the conflict styles is called withdrawal, and sometimes it's called avoidance. And so again, if your text or the materials you've been using or your language in class has been the language of withdrawal, is the conflict style, then you would say, now in this video, it's referred to as avoidance. Again, so you can let your students know we're talking about the same thing, just a different style. The other thing that I do is if there are offensive words in the video, I always tell my class, I do show a movie that has a couple of 4-letter words in it, and I always tell them up front, I don't use this type of language, but I want you to know that it will occur in this movie. And I know when you show some of your Shakespeare movies, they have more than just 4-letter words in them, but I think I owe it to my students to let them know to be prepared.
I would also think in nursing, if you had a class around the lunchtime and you were showing something that was going to make people want to throw up.
Although they need to get over that, yeah.
We had an anatomy lab right before lunch when I was a student.
Yep.
Oh, I would never have been able to eat lunch because of the formaldehyde smell.
Hey, you learn.
Yeah.
Sitting next to it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun.
That's okay. The next suggestion is to cue your video and have it ready to go. Even when you embed a video, have it, go ahead and run it and have it prepared for your class. Students are so impatient. They are so impatient, traditional students. And so have it ready to go, And then the third one is to check your classroom lighting and seating and volume control to make sure that, like in some of our classrooms, we can turn off the front bank of lights, which is really nice. I know in Royce Brown you can do that. And also make sure you have the speakers turned on and at the right level, just having all that ready so you're not fumbling around, trying to get those things prepared. And then the next one applies to what you mentioned, Charlotte, and that is you had this great, was it 50-minute video?
Of the people doing the
Exercise?
Yeah.
50-minute video. And you're saying, well, I wouldn't use all 50 minutes. There's no rule that says you have to show an entire video. Remember, there's no rule that you have to show an entire video. Just use a segment of the video. Now, one of my heroes in media is Walter Cronkite. Now, you all recognize that name, Charlotte. You and Nikki are young enough, but I know. Oh, me too. And I had this whole video on Cronkite Remembers, and he takes a look back at how media had changed over his tenure, and I showed that whole thing. It was a 60-minute program that CBS produced. They were like zoned out by the time
they were conked out.
They were like, and I was just enthralled with it, because it was like, yes, and I remembered all those different things that he would show.
I mean,
so
these people don't even remember the Murrah.
I know. So
that was 20 years ago.
You know what I did?
They weren't born then.
Yeah, I just showed a segment, and the segment I showed is the one. The Gemini space program was the first space program with NASA. And they actually had a little model space capsule on the news set for him, showing how it worked. And so I showed just that segment. It was maybe 3 or 4 minutes long, just so that they would know who that is, so that any student who takes a history of mass media class has to know the name Walter Cronkite. I mean, that's just a given. He's an icon. And so I just showed them that one part, and that was all I needed to do. But it took me showing them the full thing the first time. They were just like, what are you doing? So just only use a segment of the video when it's appropriate. The next one, sometimes I use...
How do you handle attributing the video when you do that? Like when you start a video from the very beginning, you get the
right.
Who did it and what the title
All right,
is.
I always set the stage for that. I always let them know this is CBS, where he worked for years and years and years.
Verbally do
right,
that.
yeah. And then the next one, you don't have to show a video straight through or even a segment straight through. Pause the video when you want to emphasize something, or you can say, this is what, I want you to watch this next part because this is what we've just been talking about. And so it makes them focus on what you are wanting them to see. Also, sometimes you can stop it and say, especially in nursing, what should happen next.
Yes.
And that's a good critical thinking kind of thing to do, Suzette. It's like, instead of just spoon feeding them with the video, it's like you're showing them this, and it's like, what should happen next? And then that can be a point of discussion. Or, one thing one of my professors at OU did, he turned off the sound and asked us to narrate the video, if it was something that we had been talking about. And that was a very difficult thing to do, but if you were prepared, you know, if you were, for example, doing a physical assessment of a person, you could turn off the sound, and the student should be able to walk through what was happening in that assessment. So I thought that was a really good, I didn't at the time think it was a really good teaching learning strategy, but I do. I mean, I can appreciate it. The next one is watch the video with the class. Don't turn it on and just leave, you know. That was another one of my pet peeves in high school. We watched Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet and all that, and the teacher would flip it on and be gone for the next however long. You know, I feel like if this is worth my class watching, I should watch it with them. Now, I understand sometimes we show videos like when we're gone or something like that, but I just think that speaks to the class when I stay and watch with them.
And then there's a difference in being up front and watching, like sitting over
Oh,
here
yeah.
watching.
And that way you know what's
So
going
they
on.
can see your reactions and then going to the back and reading papers.
Yeah, or you can make sure that they don't have their laptops up and are doing all sorts of other stuff.
And I tend to walk around the classroom during the video.
Yeah, and I sit by different people. Again, it's just to keep them engaged. Number 7 is to plan an advanced organizer. This is similar to that term anticipatory set. And so advanced organizer comes from David Ausubel. And this you can use to introduce the subject matter. I always tell my class we're going to watch about a 6-minute video clip. That way, in their mind, they know, okay, I'm paying attention for X amount of time. It lets them know. Also, I use that advanced organizer to help them learn different types of things. I use it as a teaching learning strategy. In one class, I have my class listen to Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, and they are listening for the different rhetorical devices that he uses in that speech, and they have a transcript of the speech, and they can mark those as they're listening, and that way when he uses alliteration, they can pick that out, or if he's using onomatopoeia, he says the jangling chords. Jangling is a sound word. And so I do that. Sometimes I will use a sample speech, a sample student speech, and I'll have one group in the class outline the speech, its main points, and I'll have another group write down the different sources that the person used, that they give credit to, and then I have another group that will critique delivery of that particular student's speech. So they all have a little different task, but it's helping them to stay focused on what they're supposed to be doing. And then with a Hinduism video that I use in my intercultural class, I have a worksheet that they actually complete as they go along. Remember the incomplete outline I gave you all? Remember that one last week? It's sort of like that, and so they can, as they hear certain parts, they can write that in.
In Intro to Lit, which is where you have the people who don't necessarily want to be in that class.
Right, yeah.
I had a great video on Tolkien. It was like backgrounds to Lord of the Rings. It was like 20 minutes. It was fantastic. You know, filmed in New Zealand, and they were all just kind of going.
Yeah.
So I gave them a worksheet to
Yeah.
fill out. And it wasn't like fill in the blank, but it had short answer questions, so
Yes.
they knew what they had to watch for.
Right.
And I was very evil and did not tell them it was also on the internet.
Yeah.
But they paid attention.
Kennedy's asked about what,
Oh, yes.
So it gave them a purpose.
Yes.
It was
His
purposeful.
how
inaugural
do they
address.
react to that?
I have my honors class right now. I have a small group doing an analysis of his speech. I've been very impressed with him. I have them watch Nixon's checkers speech, and I have them watch, each group is a different one, and I have them, we do presidential rhetoric in that class, and I go starting with the 50s because we have videos back that
You
far.
have them do Ask Not Your Country.
Yeah, that's the inaugural address. Yeah. Okay, next one is to conduct a follow-up activity. So once the video is over, are you going to have discussion questions related to it? Are you going to break them into small groups and have them talk about certain kinds of things? It's not just, oh, we're watching a video. You know, you've got to bring it full circle for your class.
And that emphasizes the purpose.
Oh, yeah.
That you showed the video.
Right. Okay, and then the next one is make the students accountable for the information on exams. This is something that, especially that Hinduism video, I do several different major religions in intercultural communication, and so they're responsible for knowing some of the basic aspects of Hinduism, you know, on a test. So it's, you know, this is for them to be accountable for it. And then the last one, don't laugh, but bring snacks to help them stay awake. No, he doesn't do that, but I'll tell you,
I told them to bring coffee.
my this is especially important if it's a cloudy day. If the weather affects especially traditional students, and if it's a kind of a dreary day and you're turning off the lights, you know what they want to do is just. So if you have some, you know, chocolate for them or whatever, that helps. The other thing is, I do use 2 class periods for my final exam in intercultural communication. We watch an entire movie together. And so I bring them cookies and stuff to eat during that movie. And then the final exam is a discussion. They do a written part, and then I do a classroom discussion part over that movie. So I think we know they are visually oriented. We know visual learning styles are dominant with our net geners and, you know, our students, our traditional age students. So these are just some of my best practices kind of for you to consider. And as you are thinking about incorporating video into your chapter lesson plan, remember, plan an advanced organizer if you're going to have a little worksheet with it. And what are you going to do with it when you finish? Don't just say, I'm showing a video.
The students should know why you took class.
Yes, yes. It's not just I pulled this video off the shelf and popped it in kind of thing.
How it contributes to
Yeah.
learning.
Do you all have other ideas that you could add to that? From either an instructor's perspective or a student's perspective?
I have one. I've noticed there's a huge difference in, I call it BC, before the children, before I had children.
Uh-huh.
And my perspective on movies, I guess. And I got really embarrassed it was several years ago, but my husband I don't even remember the situation, but I said, oh, that's so Clockwork Orange. And he had no idea what I meant. And I said, you don't know what that is? Oh, you have to watch this movie, because, you know, I'd watched it in college, because it was the college thing. And so I got it from Netflix, and we started watching it, and it's like almost porn. Well, yeah.
What is it?
A
Clockwork Orange. But all I
very
remembered
violent.
was the it's extremely violent. I didn't remember any of the sex or any of the violence. I just remembered what it's about, the psychological aspect of it. And I was so ashamed. And I thought, how could I? But, you know, when you're in college, you just filter all that out, and it's meaningless. But now, A Clockwork Orange, it was a real famous science fiction book, and they made that movie. It's really interesting, but I didn't remember it. It's so horrid. And I've noticed a lot of things are like that I thought they were great in college, and now I watch them again, videos, and my filter, I guess, just didn't work back then. So you put, one of the first things you put was watch the video. I would put rewatch.
Yeah, rewatch the video.
It's been a while.
Well, and you don't want to show something that's going to make students feel uncomfortable in your class, be embarrassed. You have males and females, those hormones are surging anyway, you know, and you don't want to.
So complain. Everybody likes to complain. I would see where if you didn't watch nowadays before, first thing they would do is hit the door and go to whoever they could to complain because of whatever.
So would it be unethical if I was wanting everyone to watch some, okay, so pretend we have class every day, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, okay. And so it's a Monday, and I said, by Wednesday's class, I want you to watch such and such a movie, and it's on Netflix. And I said, does everyone have Netflix? And there's like 5 students that raise their hand and say, oh, we don't have Netflix. So would it be unethical for me to give them my Netflix password and then just change it after they watch the movie?
You take that one. My voice is given out. No.
I probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You think that'd be unethical, like cheating Netflix out of their...
Well, I think it would maybe, I'm not so worried about Netflix, I'm more worried about what the students would do in other situations if they felt like that you were approving that. I think what I would do, I would probably rent it if I could, and then trot it up to campus and find an alternative time for those guys.
Yeah, Dr. Hackler's really good about having showings of movies like one night a week, or so
or
that
I would see if it's on iTunes, and they could
Yeah.
buy it on iTunes, which is not the same as having to have a subscription.
Yeah.
I'd look for an alternative. I don't think I would compromise my account.
Yeah.
So is it
Because
ethical?
you also don't know what else they're going to watch.
Well,
Right.
yeah, but it would show you on your...
Yeah,
shows you
yeah.
what the- if
What
you
else
told
do they
them-
watch? They watch Clockwork
If you told them
Yeah,
not
they-
to. So the other thing, Amazon Prime is similar to
Yeah,
Netflix,
Right.
but you can buy a movie. So if I bought,
Or rent it. Yeah, either way.
if I bought a movie, like they're usually about $8 or whatever,
Right.
and you don't get anything, you just buy it,
Uh-huh.
the stream, I guess, too. Would it be unethical then for me to show that in class?
Not
I
for
don't think so.
not for educational purposes.
No, and I've shown Netflix in class, and I've
Yeah.
shown, I haven't shown.
So
Amazon
that
in
would be the
class.
same as if
Uh-huh.
I went to Walmart and bought the actual
Yes.
DVD.
Yes.
If I
Yes.
buy it from Amazon.
Yes, for
You get
educational
an
purposes.
educational discount with Amazon Prime too.
Yeah.
With the Amazon Prime, you get the educational discount too. You don't have to pay the full price.
Well, I did,
had no
in my
idea.
mythology,
Oh, sorry.
in my mythology online class, we did watch a film together the last week, and it was the basis for the final. And so I gave them all these different ways they could get it.
Yeah.
Some paid, some for, like they had Netflix, they could get it there, or they could get it Amazon Prime. And then I said, I have a copy, and I'll put it on reserve in the library. And that way they, if they couldn't do it electronically, maybe they live somewhere where they can't stream, and maybe they don't have Netflix. So I gave them at least three or four alternatives and warned them in advance.
Yeah.
And that was fair.
This is complete. You can answer me after class, but do you feel like the Percy Jackson series is a very good preparation for,
Oh, I don't know. I got really bored watching it. But,
I mean, the books?
oh, the books. No, I haven't read the books. I probably should.
My
My
daughter,
students are familiar with it.
yeah, my daughter just sings That's the Cat's Meow, right?
Oh,
And she knows.
interesting.
I mean, I'm surprised at how accurate she's always talking about the characters.
Just got her to read and follow.
Well, that's my part for this evening. So.
Okay.
My other things can wait till next week.
Okay, yeah, you were going to talk about simulation, but I
And
didn't.
simulation.
think you had anything on
And
that.
then in small group. We can do that next week.
Okay.
And then do you want to do discussion questions next week when Jennifer's back? Or?
I think that's probably a good idea.
Because she can bring her questions too.
Hang on to them until
Yeah,
next week.
let's do that. Because, again, classroom discussion is a huge thing that you need to be comfortable with. So.